I think we're live with my good friend Leland Sklar. Lee, it is so good to see you.
Hi, babe.
I hope you have some pastrami in your back pocket for me.
Um, or are you just happy to see me? You
Ay,
know,
ay,
my,
ay.
my my dear friend Kevin Albender runs Katz's Deli, and so I love having this. It makes me feel close to Kevin and that whole New York deli scene, which is really difficult for me now when I go there because I don't eat meat.
Okay, we have to talk about that. We have to talk about all these health things and aging. But I want to give a plug for Katz's because that is my given name is Vicky Katz.
I mean,
And
it's so great, and that reminds me of Mickey Katz, who was one of my favorite old.
Mickey Katz.
Yeah.
Okay, but now there are lots of things you can eat at Katz's, even if you don't eat meat,
Oh
because
yeah.
they have great knishes.
Well, I also like I'll get it like a lox and onion scramble,
Oh
and
yeah,
get some fried potatoes
a
with it.
latke and a latke, yeah,
Yeah.
fried
So
potato.
I mean, there's stuff there. I mean, when you know that the essence of it is pastrami,
Yeah,
it's hard, to go in there and see these sandwiches.
and the guys cutting that, when you stand online and you watch them, and it's an art, and you
Oh,
tip them.
absolutely.
Snuffy and I, we went at midnight on a Saturday, tip the guy, and then he gives you all the tastes while you're standing there.
Because what
Um,
what makes me crazy is when you see them cutting and then they're scraping off the ends and stuff. I'm going, that's what I
that's the
want.
best part.
Best part.
So, Lee, why are you a vegetarian? When did you become a vegetarian?
It's been about 15 years now, I guess 12, 15 years. I'm not a total vegetarian. I'll eat some chicken every once in a while and fish, but I saw too many factory farming videos. I didn't
Mhm.
do it based on health.
Oh, okay.
I did it really based on when I saw these movies of the horrors of commercial slaughterhouses.
Hmm.
And I just went, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And I grew up in a steak and potatoes household and all that. And I think back to our early days in the studios back down in Hollywood. There was Houston's Barbecue, which
Oh,
was our
yeah.
favorite sandwich joint. We would get the jumbo brownie, which was all the burnt ends and all that. I mean,
Jumbo brownie.
it was great. And the only thing for me that was really good was the thing I missed more than anything was burgers. And I've come to really embrace an impossible burger because if
Possible burgers are good. But
it,
wait, isn't it hard when you're on the road? Isn't it harder to be a vegetarian when you're on the
well,
road?
the thing is, like, we're on tour with Lyle Lovett. We've been out for a couple of years now, and we got the
Hmm.
rest of the year we're on the road. They always have local caterers, and the thing they always have beef, probably chicken and seafood and
Okay.
salads. So because there's some of the crew guys and everybody really kind of aren't ready meat eaters. So they accommodate that. They make sure that it
So
catering.
you'll eat the seafood or the chicken on those
I mean, there's
occasions.
usually salmon or a local
Mm-hmm.
fish,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll have that and make. I always like it making a big salad and stuff. So I don't miss it. It's
The salmon slaughterhouses are not as bad.
no, I mean
No.
some of them are, but so I try to be more discerning about that.
Yeah.
It's tough. I mean, the road isn't an easy place to be.
Okay, so let's talk about that. We're not kids anymore. So, how do you even stand up for that long? That's what I want to know. How do you even
Um,
do it?
and the thing with Lyle is our shows are a good 3 hours.
Oh,
So we're not up there for like one of those 75-minute shows. And we do
oh.
3 hours with no intermission.
Do you sit at all during the gig?
No, no.
Wow,
We
that's stamina.
the thing is, the only time I really feel my age is when I walk by a reflective surface. Then I think some old bum broke into my house. So I just took all the mirrors out. So I'm still rocking. No, I, I, I mean, it's interesting. Like when I'm out there, I film every venue we play. And one of the things people always say is, we can't believe when you're going through these venues and you're hiking up and down like 5 flights of stairs and filming it. And I'm not winded. But when I discovered the health app on my iPhone, I never even thought about it. And I would talk to friends of mine who said, "Oh yeah, man, we're doing like 8,000 steps a day, we're." And I look at mine, and I average between 20 and 25,000 a day. So I mean, I feel healthy out there. It really I'm totally fine with being up there. I could do 3 to 5 sets a night, and I would not.
It's fantastic. So you don't have any of the age, because I have arthritis, I have stenosis, I have sciatica, I have all. So why do you think you've avoided all of this? Do you think it's because you've stayed physical all these years? I mean,
Probably an element of that where I never smoked or drank or did drugs or any of that.
there
So
you go.
I
Well,
wasn't
there you
really,
go.
I wasn't, diminishing my system in that way. It wasn't any virtue in that. It was just I'm too much of a control freak to let go. And so for me, that became my way. I was the designated driver in every band I was in back when I was a teenager, just making sure everybody got home okay. Um, but no, I just I try to eat well and keep moving, and just I think it's just keep moving. There's so many people I know that are this age that just become sedentary, and then they start putting on weight and they get lethargic, and the next thing you go, there hasn't been any good music since Inagata Davida.
Well, I think Lee too. It's genes. I mean, I have good longevity genes, but my mother's got stenosis, and my father had arthritis and all that stuff. So your parents must have been good in that department, I'm thinking.
Okay, my dad, my folks lived into their 90s. Um,
Unbelievable.
and but my dad ended up with basically heart failure in it. I just, you
Well,
know,
in the 90s, if that's going to, if
yeah,
it's going to
no,
happen, that's a good time.
yeah. I mean, when people start saying, we're getting to that age, I go, no, 90s was getting to that age. When
That's
I started
right.
losing friends in their 40s and 50s, that's not that age.
Okay,
And
let's talk about while we're here. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to know, did you ever play with Brian? Did you ever play with Brian Wilson?
I did an album called Orange Crate Art with Van
Mhm.
Dyke Parks and Brian Wilson.
Mm.
And it was great. It was great. And I was around him on a number of occasions. And when I heard the news that he had passed, I just kind of, it seems we're losing a lot at this point with losing Sly Stone the other day.
Did you ever get to play with Sly?
No, I saw one of the best shows I ever saw was at the Hullabaloo in Hollywood, which was one.
Hullabaloo.
Yeah. And it was they used to do those multi-bill
Hmm.
shows. And the opening act was the original Sons of Champlin, followed by Sly and the Family Stone, followed by Canned Heat.
Oh my gosh.
And Sly, and that was back in the beginning with them. That was probably around 67, 68, somewhere in there.
Jesus.
And, they were just in street clothes. They hadn't gotten freaky or anything. But
Wow.
man, they were so good. If he had not discovered medications, he could have ruled the world
Yeah.
because he was one of those guys that just like, when you look at where Prince ended up and stuff, you kind of go, that's the guy that they really drew from more so than probably even James Brown. I think
Wow.
Sly,
That's a
Sly,
big statement, but I know what you're saying.
Sly was unbelievable. And
Mm.
but he was kind of like,
Did he already have that that total funk thing going on?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they just didn't have like the,
The
the
outfits.
visual, the outfits and all that,
Right.
kind of like P-Funk and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But he reminded me a little bit of David Crosby from the standpoint that he's one of those guys that you're sad when they pass and you can't believe they lasted that long.
Mm.
Because they did so many things that should have taken him out way before, but they somehow sustained through all the years. Now, David was still, you know, sounding great right up to his passing. When I see pictures of Sly towards the end, he really looked like, he was living on the streets and everything. So it was more tragic with him, but one of the most talented people. But it seems like almost, I mean, I don't even, I look at my Facebook page sometimes and it's more of an obituary column.
It's just horrible. That's how I get my news, like first
Huh.
thing in the morning, and it's usually bleak.
Well, and
Le-
seeing like Billy Joel now going through this brain thing, because Stevie Nicks they had been doing concerts, stadium concerts, and
Right.
they had some shows coming up, and they've had to cancel all of that stuff now.
Oh,
Waddy, because I talked to Waddy about that because he's Stevie's MD, and he said no. I mean, they're going out, they're still gigging, but the shows that they were supposed to be making up and all that, there's no telling where he's heading. In the same like Neil Diamond was getting ready to hit the road, and then he was diagnosed with a condition and he had to
mhm.
call it. And it's uh it's really hard, seeing these guys who and women who are all just so vital and so and
Okay,
I'll,
Linda, have you talked to Linda
I talk to Linda pretty regularly.
and
Uh,
how is she doing?
she's doing okay. I mean, she's like in a wheelchair, I think, most of the time now.
Mhm.
And but if you talk to her on the phone, it's Linda. You would not know that there's something
Oh,
has
that's
gone on.
wonderful.
Yeah, no, so she's totally there, and she's always been one of the smartest people I've known, and she's t completely engaging on the phone. It's just she's struggling with just physical things that come with this disorder,
And
and
how about Phil? How's he doing?
I just saw some pictures of Phil somebody took the other day, and he actually looked pretty good compared to how he looked a year ago. I don't anticipate
Oh,
we'll ever do music because I think
oh.
that's out of the question. Just from the standpoint, number one, he um, can't play drums anymore, and that was really his motivation at that point for
But I
playing.
thought he was fronting and wasn't his son playing? Was his son
Yeah.
playing? Yeah.
Yeah, well, on the last tour we did, Nick,
Mhm.
his son,
Mhm.
took over because literally, because it had always been Phil and Chester Thompson, dual drumming, and then Chester
Mhm.
carried the show. And they had a falling out at one point, and we auditioned drummers at that point, and we tried a whole bunch of different guys. Nick didn't get the gig because he was Phil's son. It was convenient that he could audition because he was there. But Nick was a really solid drummer when he was 4 because he grew up. I
What?
mean, he would sit on the side of the stage
Uh,
as a baby and watch every show. And he had a little drum set in Phil's dressing room, and like Daryl Sturmer and I would walk by it during a show, before the show started or afterwards, and we would hear this drumming, and we'd look, go, is that Phil or Nick? And he was
oh
far,
my
far.
God, that's insane.
And he's been out with Mike and the Mechanics now. He's out touring with them. And the thing that's beautiful about Nick is probably one of the nicest people I've ever met. Where
Oh.
you kind of think of some of the kids of celebrity can
Hmm.
be a real pant load, and he is absolutely a delightful young man. As is his brother Matthew, who's a pro soccer player in Europe now.
Oh, wow.
And he's I think 2 or 3 years younger than Nick.
So now if Phil looks better than he did a year ago and he was out not that long ago and he can still sing, can't he?
He can sing. He can't sing like he once did. I don't.
Mm,
Few can
yeah.
at this point when you hear them. There's so many of the artists that are out there that they ultimately they drop some of the keys to make them lower. And one of the things that Phil talked about that it was interesting because a lot of people go, oh, I can't believe, man, that when he recorded that it was in A, but now he's doing it like in F sharp, But Phil said, the thing I always forget is when I'm in the studio cutting a track, that's all I'm doing that day is singing that song. Suddenly you get up with a 3 hour plus show and
Right.
and you're working every night and there's wear and tear on you. So suddenly that easy day in the studio is can be arduous when you're on the road. And it's just easier rather than destroying the whole show by blowing your pipes out. Let's just lower the key a little bit. But you get all these putzes. I mean, when I read these comments that people tend to put out there, talking about, oh yeah, I'll bet most of that show is all on pre-record, like they're professional, or I hear auto tune all over it, and we go, he never used auto tune. Everything, we even had it in the program with Phil that everything was live on the
Wow. I
show.
love that.
And when I see like Toto's, like we did a show in from Paris back the first time I toured with Toto called Falling in Between. And all these guys come on there like they're sound engineers going, well, the Bobby Kimball doesn't sound like that. That's all auto tune and fake. And I'm going, I was standing next to him every night. That's what he sounded like. But
Oh,
these armchair warriors that sit there like they know everything because they've read a couple of magazines and they know the catchphrases to throw out there. And I just go, can't you just shut the fuck up and sit back and enjoy the show? You can sit here and disseminate everything like you really know what's going on. I said, who's got the gig? You or him?
okay. So speaking of shutting the fuck up,
Yeah.
Lee, what are we going to do? I mean, we'll get back to music, but I look to you, Lee, to be as aggravated and insanely crazed by this shit as I am. What the hell?
What what amazes me is that, and I'll use my language when I say, but what amazes me is that this fucking piece of shit in the bottom of the East River for all of his real estate bullshit that he's done his whole life,
Yeah.
long before politics, long before The Apprentice or any of that, this guy has been known as a complete grifting scumbag his whole life. I mean, he's never had a legitimate business, anything work done right in his life. And his genes are as tainted as anything you could imagine. When you look at his father, you look at his grandfather.
Did you see that documentary where it wasn't a documentary, it was a film that came out about a year ago. And
Yeah,
like Roy Cohn and his father, these two of the worst men that ever roamed the earth
yeah,
were
yeah.
his.
It's they're the personification of evil. And I know people directly whose companies were ripped off by this guy, where they
Well,
did all the work that had to be done, and then when it came time to pay the bill, they go sue me. That's his whole mode at that point. And one of them got a dime on the dollar. That cost them millions of dollars. This guy is a low life piece of shit. And but the thing is, he tapped in to what you didn't really realize was an element of this society. You hope that people are better than this, but the people that have drank the Kool-Aid with this
mhm.
guy, they could care less. Whenever you present them with the truth, they don't want to hear about it. They are so set in their ways, their feet are in cement as far as ever changing. Now, looking at all this nonsense that's going on with ICE, when the whole idea of this thing was to get gangs and drug dealers, yet they're going after the guys that are looking for day work at Home Depot. They're, they're going after hardworking people that work so much harder than these people have ever worked in their lives. Then you see what's going on in downtown LA. Well, the demonstrations are totally peaceful. What
Mm.
happens in the evening is you get that element that comes out. That's the exact same bunch of people that when the Lakers win, they have their big parade and everybody celebrates. And then after that, you have this other element that comes in and starts looting and breaking into stores that have nothing to do with
Nothing to do with
they
politics. Absolutely.
all
Absolutely.
opportunism, be able to rip
Mhm.
stuff off. And that, I mean, I'm seeing that, but you've got this lunatic impotence cretin who sits there going, well, now we got to send in the military. And like when I listen to Karen Bass and all that, and they show a map of LA, which is like this big, and there's this tiny dot, which is where the problem has been. And they've got that completely under control at this point. They put in a curfew. And but when this guy is sitting there calling Gavin Newsom new scum, all he can do
Oh,
is come up with these infantile playground name calling. But if you were there with him and you went up to him and chose him off, he would run home crying. He is such a chicken shit. And now having his big military parade when he hates the military. I mean, when you think about the way he acted when he was in Normandy and he wouldn't go and honor the fallen soldiers in Normandy because it was raining and he was concerned about his hair.
mhm.
Yeah, I mean, everything about this guy is sickening. And then everybody, he's from RFK to Stephen Miller, he's surrounding himself with the most grotesque, incompetent, hateful, vile creatures.
Barbie and Ken dolls, they're all vapid idiots that just
Yeah,
look pretty.
yeah,
And what about that RFK firing everybody
yeah.
yesterday? I mean, what?
So now when polio starts coming back and all this, anything that happens from this point on is on them.
Well,
They
it's
can't,
already, look at the measles epidemic. I mean,
oh
we haven't
no,
had, this is crazy.
no. But look at this guy who was a heroin addict who had a brain worm, who's done the most unbelievably
Who
insane.
left a dead bear in Central Park?
Yeah, I mean, he has put together an administration
Mm.
of the absolutely most incompetent fools that are only there because they'll kiss his ass. That's it. They will do his bidding, and his bidding is so screwed.
Okay,
And
so here's my question,
yeah,
Lee. What do you think? We're only less than a half of a term of a year in. What do you think he can sustain this for 4 years? Because I don't. Do you think he can sustain this for
I
four
don't think he
years?
can sustain it. I just think that his playbook is all of the worst dictators, the
Hmm.
Putins and the Kim Jong-un and Mussolini and Hitler
Hmm.
and all this. That's his playbook for things. So if he can manipulate enough of the armed services and all that to do his bidding, we're facing some really horrible things down the line. I don't know really what the answer is except, getting rid of him. And to me, the only thing that potentially can help would be the midterm elections if people realize they got screwed and they come out and turn the House and the Senate, then that renders him impotent. And then they could, at that point, even impeach him and get rid of him.
Well, but you were saying that there's
But
scuttlebutt that we don't even know if we're going to have
we don't
midterm
even know if we'll
elections.
have it because everything that's part of our Constitution and our
They're
laws,
shutting down.
he uses the only thing he knows about the Constitution is he has it printed on his toilet paper and he wipes with it.
God,
Because when
it's, it's
when
not
anybody
funny. It's
confronts
terrible.
him about any of these things, it's kind of like when the guys were talking to him and they said, "Well, what's your favorite book?" And he goes, "Well, the Bible." And they say, "What's your favorite verse?" He goes, "Well, that's personal. I don't want it." He has never read the Bible. I mean, this guy is when his lips are moving, he's bullshitting. And he sits there and makes up numbers. He was just talking about something. Egg prices have dropped by like 400%. There's no such thing as 400%. At 100%, they're giving him away free. But he just sits there and spews this bullshit. Every time he talks, he has no clue what he's talking about, and his handlers are too scared to call him on it. And then now it turns out when a newsman calls him on it, the newsman loses his job.
I saw that today. The guy from ABC, right?
Yeah, it's disgusting that it's all disappearing before our very eyes. And there's still people out there going, "He's our man. He's making America great again." Fuck you.
I don't know. Do you think that he has? First of all, I don't think he won the election, so
Oh
that's
no,
like a
I
whole
think
nother thing.
that's all bullshit.
All bullshit. And I also don't. I do think that he's lost people along. I think
Oh,
he is losing his own people. I
for
do.
sure. For sure he is, but whether or not that's enough.
It's enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not
I
enough.
yeah, I look at this guy and there have been people in history who are charismatics that can sway people. I look at this bloated, stinking buffoon out there. I go, this
With
guy,
the self tanner, that's
yeah.
not.
Oh God. And the whole bullshit with well, they tried to assassinate him. Yet there's no evidence of him ever being hit by a bullet on his.
Okay, now that appears now that was total crap. That was
Oh yeah,
total
I
crap.
knew it was crap from the moment, the minute that happened, and he's suddenly up there pumping his fist and all. That's not how that works. When Reagan was shot, they were on top of him. That's not how this stuff works. And they say, but a man lost his life. I go, collateral damage. That's all that is. That's just
Mhm.
somebody that happened to get killed. So what at that point to them? Because they just don't care. We're all collateral damage for their power games, and then having Musk come in and just firing. I mean, I remember a couple of years back we did the Kennedy Center honors, and they were honoring James Taylor. No, so they thought the fun thing would be is to get the original band back together without him knowing it and all that. And then Sheryl Crow sang with us. So we're getting ready to go on, and I'm standing there in the wings, and Obama's president at this point, but
Mhm.
the next year it was going to be Trump coming in. And I feel this guy kind of standing next to me, bumping into me, and it was Bill Clinton. So we
Ah,
so we start talking, and we both looked up at Obama, and we just looked at each other and said, "It's all over."
oh,
We just knew the next season because they already were going to have Norman Lear the next year and a bunch of other people that were going to be
Who
the,
weren't going to go
and they
with,
said, we're not coming if that guy's
that's
there. The
right.
guy has never been involved in anything artistic in his life. He's never had a pet. There's no pets. Now they're cementing over the Rose Garden, which is one of the most beautiful parts of the White House. And Melania's out there now. They're gonna pave it. Yeah, I mean everything.
He's going to the Kennedy Center tonight or tomorrow or something to see Les Mis, and half the cast already said they won't perform.
No, they're not. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy is a pariah. He's a pox on it, and his presence. I mean, just look at him at Jimmy Carter's funeral.
Mm.
He was so on the
He
out.
was sleeping. I
Yeah,
mean, it was horrific.
he's just
He was dressed inappropriately. I mean, everything about him is
when he went to
inappropriate.
the Pope's funeral and they said wear black, so he shows up in blue. I mean,
Oh, that's where he showed up in blue. Right. That's
he
where,
can't
right. It
get
wasn't Jimmy Carter. Yeah.
he can't get out of his own way. He's so stupid. And the real sad is that he can't form a sentence that makes any sense at all. He goes off. I mean, all they would talk about is, well, Joe Biden, he's losing his mind. He's the old sleepy Joe. And everything, and then you just saw, he can't even get on Air Force One. He falls down. And there he was the other day, falling down, going up the stairs into Air Force One. He can't put a cohesive thought together. So he starts bullshitting. He's kind of like a bad jazz musician. He's just kind of riffing all the time. He doesn't know the song, so he's just riffing.
So
But he's
do
riffing
you
the wrong key.
do, do you think all this focus on LA, which he's making it such a big deal, when there's peaceful protests downtown in this small area, he's
Yeah.
sending in the National Guard and he's doing all of this shit. Do you think this is all to distract? They're saying, I was listening to Lawrence last night and he was saying it's a distraction, right? From the tariff and all this other nightmare stuff.
The Epstein files, all of that. Every time anything starts to come up, they come up with something to make a smokescreen to get rid of it. I mean,
What do you think is
so
going to happen with Elon? Do you think what's going to be with him and Elon?
who knows with these guys? They're both disgusting. I mean, Elon Musk hasn't invented anything. He's a business opportunist who came from blood diamonds in Africa. His family made their money, their wealth in the blood diamond trade down there. And he obviously, I mean, when they start talking about all the drugs this guy takes and what is going on with him, I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah, is he a ketamine freak or something? Is he a
a
ketamine
whole
freak? Something?
bunch of everything.
Hmm.
He takes like
Yeah.
a dozen different meds. Um, I just find them all so hideous. It's like I always loved it was a while back. They go, well, I don't see any hospitals or libraries or anything like that that are the Elon Musk wing or anything. This is all about his own thing where you look at the Carnegie Hall and you look at all these different things where these people have.
Philanthropists.
Yeah, I don't
Mhm.
think this guy is in the same way. I don't think Zuckerberg or
Mhm.
Bezos or any of these people are. These are selfish, arrogant, stinking little creepy people. And it's sad, when Tesla first came out, you're kind of going, cool. Well, certainly is a shame that he took the name of one of the smartest human beings who ever lived and they put it on that product. But at this point, when I look at everything that's come out of these people, they've negated anything positive they've ever done by, their kind of Nazi salutes and when you start digging deeper into it, you start to really see really where they all come from on these things. I remember when George was running for president, George Bush,
Mhm.
and I was reading everything, and then I was starting to read about his father, and then his grandfather was pure evil, out part of the Skull and Bones Society with Averell Harriman and all these people. Prescott Bush was profoundly evil man. So that whole dynasty is based on really evil, footings that they've all come in. All of these guys seem to have this, but I love when people start talking about like, because I get shit all the time. People say, just play your bass and shut up. We don't need musicians, talking
I was
politics.
gonna.
Yet they sit there and they've got a guy who was a failed game show host is their guy. And they go, all those elites. And here's the guy who had the golden toilets and all this. I mean, what is elite to these morons who are attacking people like that West Coast libtards and all that? I mean, I'm so weary of it because it's stupidity.
Do you take shit on the road? When I would
Oh,
imagine if people are going to buy a ticket to come to a concert, they're not going to do that. Do they do that?
no, I've had some people come up and give me shit, but I've had some people come up and say, I don't necessarily always agree with you, but there's a lot of stuff you're saying, But and to me, I'm out there. I don't present a lot of stuff on the road, number one, because
Mhm.
I'm not the artist up there. I'm not the one like
Right.
when you got Springsteen up there, he can talk. Any of these guys can talk. That's not my position. I remember when we were out on Phil's tour, when Bush was running, and I had a sticker on my bass that said "Prune Bush," and and, and people started complaining, going, "We came for a concert, not a political rally."
Oh,
It's that
mm,
sticker. And Tony Smith came to me and he goes, "This is weird because Phil totally agrees with you, but these people are starting to get in his." And I immediately took the sticker off at that point. I said, "No, that's not his job to be defending me."
right.
If somebody wants to come up and get in my face, I have guys that write to me and they go, "We know your touring schedule. We're going to come get you."
Oh my
And
Lord.
so some of them I've responded to, and I said, "Okay, so let me get this straight. You're down in the basement right now in your jammies. Mommy just brought you some old. You're jerking off to Pac-Man, and you're sitting behind your screen now. Oh, so bring it on." Bring it up. And you never hear from these people again. They're gone at that point. They're armchair warriors sitting behind their screen acting tough.
Do people show up on your YouTube? Are they all supporters, or do people who are?
Occasionally I get people on there. And
Mhm.
the thing is, I don't even respond to them because the bulk of the people on
Yes.
the channel, they take up the gauntlet at that point and they eat
Right.
that person alive. No, we live in a world, we live in what I thought was a democracy where if somebody wants to think, like people will say, you're gonna just block me if I say anything. I go, I don't block people just because I don't agree with them. I would never do that. Now, if you come to my page and you're threatening and you're ignorant and you're just saying stuff that you've heard on Fox News or this is what Rush Limbaugh or Sean Hannity is talking about and you're treating it like the gospel, I said, and you're going to start becoming belligerent, you will be blocked. If you want to have a reasonable dialogue based in facts and truth, I'm happy to talk to you and I'm willing to listen to you. And I grew up in Los Angeles during the Nixon and Goldwater period of what Republicans were then. I didn't agree with much of it, but I knew people that were, and we could have dialogues. But that party doesn't exist anymore. This MAGA party is so profoundly corrupted and evil, and it cares nothing whatsoever. I mean, I can't believe people that are losing everything are still thinking this is the right way as they lose their health care, their businesses, everything. I mean, they're so gone, and breaks my heart. Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I know your parents were lefties, right? They were
Yeah.
activists. And we grew up in that time, and you were an activist, were you not? Yes. So, what does 2025 activism look like? What do you think it looks like? What can we do? What
It's
should we do other
it's
than voting? I mean, yeah, we're gonna.
it's starting to look a little like it did during the Vietnam period from the
Mhm,
standpoint of people taking to the streets, in
mhm,
large numbers out there.
mhm,
Um, it's the thing is, it's so different now because of I think because of technology and media.
mhm,
There you had to be there, you had to experience things with AI and AI now, or as the education woman McMahon says, A1. She still thinks it's a steak sauce. Fucking idiot. It comes from the wrestling dynasty, but she's qualified to be the head of education. So, but with AI, I mean, they can fake anything now, and you can't
Mm,
tell what's going on. It is really a difficult period where the news is instantaneous. People are streaming in real time, and they can say whatever they want. And it seems like so many people now, they'll read the headline, but they'll never read the story. And if it's proven
mm.
wrong, well, what they said was on the front page, and the redaction of it is on the last page.
Yeah.
They don't go that far. But I remember when Lyndon Johnson came to the Century Plaza Hotel during the height
Mhm.
of Vietnam, and there was a massive demonstration against the war outside, and went with my dad there. And my dad at that time had one of those corner magazine stands where they sold, books and
Mhm.
newspapers and all that stuff. Well, there was a group of Cuban revolutionaries that were in support of the war. They came in with signs and they were trying to hit people with them. And so my dad, this guy came up, my dad grabbed the sign from this guy. Somebody took a picture of it, and the next day when he went to work and the bundle of newspapers was dropped off to put out from the Herald Examiner, front page was my father holding the sign, looking like he's hitting this little Cuban guy, talking about how the protesters were attacking, and he's
Oh,
looking at this guy, and that's how they were. It's been working since then. They just corrupt whatever they want to do to fit their needs. And now seeing news media and all that kowtowing to this impotent, bloated sack of rancid puke is just beyond belief that they're
but
all.
it's also terrifyingly. I mean, we
Oh
were
yeah,
talking earlier about David Crosby, and this is so Kent State. It's looking like Kent State, and it's
yeah.
terrifying what can happen here. He is dangerous. They will kill people.
Oh yeah, no, that's the next thing in line. I mean, they shot that Australian newswoman. It might have been a rubber bullet, but she had to go to the hospital. She was
Hmm.
bleeding. I
Hmm.
mean, what was she doing? She's standing there with a microphone, and next thing you know, they're shooting at her.
We were listening to CNN yesterday, and the reporter was saying they weren't letting the reporters get out. Like
Yeah.
they couldn't get, they didn't know how they were going to get. I mean, it's
Well,
insane.
there's nobody's in charge of this stuff. It's kind of like when you talk to the LAP, when you see them being interviewed, the LAPD,
Mm.
they're sending in all these troops that know nothing about crowd control. So now we're going to be dealing with their incompetence.
Hmm.
And I'm not blaming these soldiers. I mean, why the hell are these soldiers being dragged out to do this when they're talking about so far they've arrested like maybe 90 people out of all this time, and they're bringing in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of troops, which has now cost $140 million to get them here, which all and between that and this.
The Marines are sitting inside somewhere doing nothing.
Yeah, well, they were just run out of a hotel here in Pasadena.
Oh,
They
really?
were staying at one of the big hotels, so they put him up there, and a huge crowd gathered outside, and they split.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, this is madness because there's no rhyme or reason. They've gotten rid of all with the military. They've gotten rid of all the leaders who knew what to do, and now they have all these people like Hegseth or whatever this fucker's name is, the drunken frat boy who's now acting like. And when they talk, all they talk about is California's burning to the ground right now. You know,
Okay, speaking of which, I'm going to interrupt you again. So, what do you think
anytime,
of
please.
Gavin
I'm a
Newsom?
blabbermouth.
What, no, but I want your opinion on all these things. So, and people are going to get mad on here because we're not talking about music. We'll get to music, I promise. How do you feel about Gavin Newsom? Because I happen to like the man. How do you feel about Gavin?
At this point, I would love to see him be our next president.
I, I wanted to vote for him last time. I
I would,
wanted
I
them to
would have,
put him up.
I would
I
have.
would have. I would
Um,
have
he's
too.
got style and panache, but he's also smart.
He is smart.
And
He's getting a very bad rap, though.
oh,
He
he's
got
got
a he took a
terrible.
lot of shit during the fires. He took a
Yeah.
lot of shit. I don't even understand what that whole thing was with the water going out to the ocean. I don't even know what that was all
Well,
about, but
that's
people were
nonsense.
crazy.
Well, and also with the fires, I mean, I know a lot of people who lost their homes. We
So
had
do I.
damage here.
I
The thing is, I got hit with 100-mile-an-hour winds, unprecedented for where we
Mhm.
live. You have a fire going on, which may have started by Edison's, like a
You
transformer.
weren't that far, were
I
you?
was about 3 miles from Altadena.
That's what I thought. And so were you guys impacted?
Oh yeah, we were ready. But what happened with us was I had right in front of my house, I had like 100-year-old tree about 100 feet high, and I heard an explosion in the middle of the night, and a third of that tree came crashing down. And so I ended up calling a guy that I know who has a tree service, and he came out and we looked at it and he says, I love trees, but we got to take this one down. And
It didn't land on anything.
no, if it
And
had fallen the other way, it would have crushed the house.
Oh
I
my
was just look,
Lord.
but when you're looking at a fire going on in all this tinder, because most of those homes in Altadena, a lot of wood roofs, a lot of, a lot of lead paint, a lot
A
of,
lot of asbestos,
yeah.
yes.
I mean, because
Hmm.
those are from like the teens and the 20s up there.
Sure.
But once you have winds that strong, there's almost impossible to do anything about it. It's so
Hmm.
defensive. There's no offensive time when you're dealing with that. You're on defense. And right below my house is the Rose Bowl. And it became the staging area for all the fire departments down there. It became a
Hmm.
separate city down there. And the thing I loved was they were driving by my house every day, and you could see on the side of the trucks it would say Fresno, San Francisco,
Yeah.
Mexico, Canada. Everybody was here help.
Everybody he was trying to lock out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that piece of shit is over.
Israel. I mean, they were coming from everywhere.
Yeah,
Canada.
I mean, this
Um,
really was a rallying point, and I went down and I
mhm,
was talking to a lot of firemen taking food. I went to the market
mhm.
and bought every donut they had and took them all down there, and there was water and stuff for them, and it was remarkable. But they were all saying, "This is unprecedented. They never had that kind of wind in a fire situation before." So there was no way to get around that. But you have all these armchair warriors once again saying, "Well, if it wasn't for the mayor and the governor, this would have been fine." And then this idiot's Trump saying, well, if they would have only swept up the leaves in the forest, we wouldn't have. I mean, they have no answers to anything. There's no agenda with them. The only agenda they have is I've got so much light. Hold on. Let me pull this out here.
Oh, you disappeared.
No,
Oh,
no, I've got
there
reflection
you go.
coming in the window here. Let me just turn on, try to look like it's still daytime here in front of Katz's. Um, No, it's one of these things. They have absolutely no agenda to benefit people. Everything is all vindictive, and he's getting back at people now because they done him wrong. Well,
Mm,
one of the greatest things of a democratic society is the ability to protest. And now he's come out and said if anybody's protesting at his parade, that they're going to be treated really bad. I mean, he doesn't care. He wants to, and he only is doing this because he's seen pictures of Hitler and Mussolini and Putin having their parades, and he wants his own parade. Even though he despises the military, he's called them suckers and losers, that he's never visited any kind of a military cemetery or been a part of any funerals or anything like that. And he's already said that on his parade with the military, they don't want anybody who's overweight or in wheelchairs or anything. He wants like kind of an Aryan army. I mean, this is so shocking that this has happened to us in such a short, and it's not a short period of time because the groundwork for this, I think, has been laid for a long time by the
mhm.
really lunatic right-wing uh, people like the Averill Harrimans, like the Skull and Bones Society and all this, who have been around a long time. But they finally found the poster boy
Mm.
with this complete lunatic who doesn't give a shit about anything except his own, make it look at the White House now. Now look at the Oval Office now, looks like a whorehouse. They've got all this gold bling everywhere. They've taken anything of any artistic merit out of there.
It's not funny.
He's removed portraits of past presidents, and he only wants his stuff. Even I mean, it's like we could go on for days like this.
So before we move on and go back to music, what do you what do you think is going to happen?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew because every day you think it can't get worse, and it does. So
Hmm.
it's really hard to know how far this is going to go before people finally just, I mean, they're talking about the fields in the agricultural part of the state are going fallow because the workers who supply all of the food are afraid to go to work now. They're afraid to leave
Hmm.
their houses because of ice.
Hmm.
You look, there's so much going on. So I think when people are hit in the wallet, it seems to be the only time they ever sort of wake up. And it's like when he was coming in and he was saying eggs are expensive. Well, he hasn't done anything about that. Everything's more expensive. than it was before he came in with his tariffs and all this. And we haven't even seen the beginning of that. I mean, he suddenly talks about we're going to bring it all back to America. You know how long it takes to build a steel mill? Do you know how long it takes to retool to build make your iPhones? And it's never going to happen. We'll be dead in the water and remnants of our past long before that stuff can be done. I mean, we're in a global community when it comes to this. You know, they talk about make that cars got to be made in America, yet the parts come from everywhere in the world. They're assembled here, but the
Mm-hmm.
parts come from everywhere. And if you start putting tariffs on them, suddenly that car that might have been $65,000 is going to be $95,000.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking at a really, if something isn't done about this madness, we're in a dark period that I never could have dreamed I would have seen in my lifetime, especially when I would think of my father's generation and what they fought against in World War II and subsequent ones after that with the Korean War and Vietnam. But really, the world and with World War II, um, the fact that Nazis are proudly marching down the streets of American cities having parades, where the hell did this go wrong? So I don't know. I don't know. I'm scared though for it.
It's pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
And we are in a fascist regime. I mean, we are totally in a fascist regime.
Yeah.
He is absolutely terrifying. So using your platform, I guess, is one thing that you can do, right? That's something we
All I,
get to do.
that's all. I mean, at this point, that's all I can think to do.
Mhm.
I'm a little concerned about things like now they're talking about like when you leave the country, when you come back, they're going to start looking at your social media pages to see whether or not to let you back in.
What?
Yeah.
Well, we won't be getting back in, Lee.
I mean, I'm heading to Scandinavia later this year
Holy,
with
is
Lyle.
that true? Well, yeah, they threw somebody off Facebook today, but that's not like not
No,
like letting
but
somebody
but I
back
was
in the
but
country.
but they're having no problem, locking up American citizens now. So and even if they admit that they made a mistake, they go, but we can't do anything about it. I mean,
Holy
it's a
shit.
miracle that Garcia got back in this country.
Mm,
And then,
mm.
and of course, there was an accident, and all of a sudden now they're smearing him, saying, "Well, he was running drugs and people." I mean, now they're trying to make it out like he was this terrible person, where it's
The
really,
commercials though are great where they're showing all the little he's never getting back into the country. It'll be a cold day in hell before he gets.
yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and all these ICE guys who I think probably one of the reason that so many of those guys, the January 6th crimp traitors who were let out was probably to do this because they're all masked. You can't tell who any of these people are. I
Mm.
would not put it past them to have now brought all these people in and made them ICE because ICE didn't exist before this really. This is all fabricated for this now. So there's things going on that are
Wow, that's a terrifying thought.
yeah, but where did these people all of a sudden come from? They have unmarked cars. They're masked. They have no name tags. They have no paperwork, and they're just
Wow.
indiscriminately doing what they want to do, and then the people suffer for it.
Mm,
I
mm,
don't know. I
mm.
mean, this is madness. This is like Bizarro World in the old Superman comics, where everything that was yes is no. It's like this alternate universe, and you know, I'm I'm to the point. I'm more concerned at this point for like my young niece and nephew, and people that have many years ahead of them in this country. And what kind of country are they being left? At this point, I'm 78 now. So even if I'm healthy, I might have a 15 years or something like that. But they've got maybe 60 or 70 years ahead of
It's
them.
going to take decades to undo what
Yeah.
he's doing right
And
now.
and just our place on the world stage is
Mhm.
so corrupted now. I mean, and he's a laughingstock. I just got back from the UK, and over there, people are just going, "What the hell is going on?" They look at this guy like a buffoon. He's like, and this one friend of mine over there, he goes, "Even a village of idiots needs a village idiot." That's how
Oh
they
my God.
look at this.
Okay, well, speaking, let's thank you for the discourse because it's important that we have it. But let's talk about some more joyful subjects that
Anything
bring some
you
people.
anything you want, babe. I adore
I've
you.
missed Julie. I haven't seen you. Well, I did. I saw you for a few moments at Steve's
Yeah.
Wonderful album release. So tell us what's going on now with you, and then we'll talk about the immediate family. So with Lyle, what are you guys up to this summer?
Well, we've been busy all year. At the beginning of the year, we went to the UK and worked over there. Then we came back, and that was with an acoustic group. That's a five-piece plus Lyle. And then we did a East Coast and a West Coast tour with that. Now we're getting ready to start the large band tour, which is 15 of us in the band.
Well,
And we begin next week at the Yamava Casino on the 19th out here. And then
somebody asked me if you guys are doing Red Rocks this summer. Is that on your agenda?
I have not looked at the schedule. I
Okay.
hope so. I mean, I hope so because that's one of my favorite venues in
Mhm.
the world. But then we're on the road until I think this tour ends somewhere in mid late August. And then the acoustic group is back together and we're going to Scandinavia, but we actually end up in Edinburgh as our last show in Scotland. And then they've just sent out some stuff. I think there's going to be another few weeks of the acoustic group in October, November. So we're pretty slamming all year. I feel very fortunate. I've been with Lyle. I started working with him in 1988 doing his large band album.
And
So
how did that relationship first start, Lee?
um, he had done one album already at that point, and Jimmy Bowen was producing him at on the large band album, and Jimmy's and I was going to Nashville like every couple of weeks for like 10 years working down there. So I did like all of the early Reba and Vince Gill and Patty Loveless and all these different artists. And Jimmy
Hmm.
said to Lyle, he says, if you had a chance to work with Lee, would you want to do it? And he said, really, kind of thing. And so I ended up hooking up with him then, and then I went on to do like Joshua Judge's Ruth and a Rodan Sonata and a bunch of albums with him. And touring wise, I traded off with him with Victor Krauss, would play bass, who's Alison Krauss's brother, who's a
Oh,
monstrous player.
wow.
And then finally, Victor's been out with Allison and Robert Plant doing their thing. So Lyle just said, "Do you want to just do it permanently?" So I said, "No, I'd love to." And especially since Phil Collins has called it quits at this point, so
Hmm.
there wasn't a an issue with scheduling. I feel very fortunate that Lyle really likes to work. So he books a lot of work and we have a great time. The band is unbelievable. Russ Kunkel plays drums in it and Jim Cox is on keyboards and James Harris playing guitar and Jeff White. And I mean, it's an amazing cast of characters out there. And Lyle is to me one of the most unique artists I've ever worked with. So we're having a great time with that. And I'm looking forward to starting that. I was just in the studio yesterday. They're doing a documentary film on Peter Asher. And Peter
Ah.
is one of the most poignant figures in my whole career because he was producing and managing James Taylor back in the beginning, and it was through Peter that I ended up with James.
Mm.
And it was also because of Peter that when we started working, we got notoriety because Peter was one of the first people to insist that the musicians' names appear on the album jacket. So
Mhm.
when the singer-songwriter movement that really kind of kicked off with James got started, the labels were signing lots of singer-songwriters at that point because that was the new thing. And
Right.
and they would look at James's record and they see me and Russ and Cooch and they'd go, well, if they're good enough for James, let's hire those guys. And suddenly we were first called players having had no experience whatsoever. So it was interesting. So I'm thrilled that they're doing this documentary about Peter. So we were doing music for that. Um, I mean, over the past few years, things have gotten very different for me than they had been previously. When COVID hit, it
Okay, that was my next question. Is it different since COVID? Tell us.
dramatically because at that point you were sitting there looking at a date book that was full for the year that
Mhm.
suddenly was empty because everything was getting canceled.
Right.
And
What were you doing? I don't remember the answer to this. What were you doing when the lights went out, when everything stopped?
actually, the last thing we did was a Rock Legends cruise with the immediate family.
Oh,
And
I remember who was afraid to go with Steve. Somebody was afraid to go because COVID had already kind of,
he didn't want to go. But we had been hearing at that point, it was still a couple of cruise ships in Asia
right.
were still, so there was talk about this. So we did the cruise. Then when we got back, was the door slam shut. I mean, then it
But
became
what was it in your date book
oh
ahead?
record dates. I mean, almost anything that required uh, being together.
Right.
Up to that point, like when somebody would say, "Can we send you files so you could, put bass parts on?" I had never recorded at home before. I was never set up for it. So I would call friends of mine like John Gilliton or some of the other players in town who had home studios, and I'd say,
Hmm.
"Can I shoot you the files? I'll come over. We can do the bass parts, and then we can go to lunch. I'll take you to lunch," kind of thing. It was our social. When COVID hit, boom, nobody was getting together. So I suddenly was going, "What am I going to do now?" So I ended up, a friend of mine, Gussie Miller, contacted me and he said, "We're doing a cover of, oh, what was it? It was one of Phil's tunes, Easy Lover." They were going to do, they had a group of people. But at that point, you suddenly were discovering new websites, new apps, where like a cappella and stuff, where you could do parts and send them back and forth and assemble all these things. And so Gussie contacted me and he said, "Is there any way you could do this?" And I said, "I've never recorded at home. I'm not really set up." Well, he knew somebody at SSL. So next thing I know, they sent me an SSL 2 plus interface. And then I called Steve Postel from our band, and he gave kind of a walkthrough of GarageBand because I didn't need more than GarageBand to do this. And so I was able to do this. And then the immediate family was doing all our videos were being done remotely. We never were together on any of them. And it became a
Oh.
whole new kind of an education about
Hmm.
technology. And I've ended up, I mean, at home now, I've probably done at least 25, 30 albums from home for
My gosh.
and uh and it's not my favorite way to work because
Hmm.
I really thrive on the interaction between players in a studio. But the thing that actually has been really cool about it is when we were doing studio work, it's predicated on the person being there. And when I'm doing this stuff, I get people sending me files from Japan, from Germany, from South America. So it
Right.
actually opened me up to a global community.
Right.
And so I'm pretty much going all the time, all kinds of different things like Cameo. I got turned on to Cameo and I just did, I think, my 390th Cameo today. Doing a lot of Father's Day cameos for people. And so, just a lot of things that I was completely oblivious to before COVID. Suddenly they took front and center because everything I was used to was gone. At that, did my book during that whole period and
And
all.
I was gonna have my copy out here to open it because I'm in Lee's book actually too,
Oh,
giving.
hold on a minute, I'll find it in just a minute. I've got a copy laying here.
I love it. Everybody, I'm sorry I haven't been reading your questions, but I hate looking away from Lee to look over here to the Gigi wants you to know she's here.
I
There's the book. Well, we can't see the book other than your face on the
okay.
book because of the thing.
Let me see if I can hold on. You go ahead and talk, and I'll be with you in a
So,
minute.
all right, let me put my glasses on. I didn't put a contact lens in, and I didn't
Well,
leave Lee to
then
go do
squint.
it. So let's see what I can oh, I've got ring lights in my glasses here. Um
Where's Vicky? Where's little
all
Vicky?
right. I'm like sort of towards the middle-ish.
Yeah,
Um I'm trying to read if people have questions. If you guys have questions, yes, Gigi, I told Lee that you're
I'm happy
here.
to answer anything.
I'm looking. Somebody wanted to know about Redbox. Oh, on YouTube. Let's see what people are saying here. Um uh My question is, it was taken down. Why? Rich Angler is selling a huge guitar collection. I was trying to help get the word out. I don't
Hmm.
know. Um, uh,
Oh, where are you?
would Leland consider doing a TED Talk?
I would love to do that. I love TED Talks.
I have someone, a sponsee of mine is about to do one.
I think
Um,
those are really fascinating to me. I mean, depending on, who they have doing them, but for the most part, I've always found those to be really informative and eye-opening. And I especially really love the scientific ones because that was my major in school. I was a science major, and I really
we'll talk a little bit. While Lee is here, please thank him for his daily podcast that got us through the pandemic. That's
oh,
from Cheryl.
thank you.
And hi, Craig Manning. Craig is in
Hi,
London, and
Craig.
Craig was with Ferroni last night, and they were
Oh,
chatting up a
cool,
storm. Yeah.
cool.
Um, uh, so So are shows differently since COVID? Is the interaction with the audience different? Is it the same? I mean, backstage is different, isn't it? There I am. All the rest of the book is gone, but there's me with my finger.
That's all that matters.
That's hysterical.
Hi, babe.
I'm so honored to be
No,
in your
no,
book.
shows were different as we were coming because we're not out of COVID by any means. It's still,
I know four people with it right now. So yeah,
yeah,
you're
no,
right.
it's still going on. So there's
Yeah,
this kind of a delusion that, oh, it's over now. They
yeah,
were
yeah.
saying that, but
Well, the vaccines will soon be over.
yeah,
That's one
I
thing
mean,
that.
we're looking at some dark times ahead if
Mhm.
this psycho gets his way. Um, but when we were first coming out of the most virulent period
Mhm.
period of COVID, shows were weird. People were, a lot of masks in the audience, a lot of
Right.
distance. Sometimes we would do shows where they were not selling the whole place; they were selling seats and then space. At this point now, it kind of looks like the old days at the shows. Now you'll still see people wearing masks. That's really up to them at that point if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Is the backstage thing back to being the way it was? Because it,
kind of the way it is. I mean, we weren't doing any backstage at any of the
right.
shows. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's pretty much back to it because you can't be on the road. You can't tour number one if you're not vaxxed. If you're not vaxxed, you're not in the band at this point. I mean, that is
You guys had like a run though.
we had what
You,
happened was this was I think 2 years ago. Um, we had we had two buses, I think. We one of
mm-hmm.
the buses was Lyle and the rhythm section. So it
Mm-hmm.
was Lyle, me, Russ Kunkel, Jim Cox, James Hara, maybe one other guy on that. The other bus, this was with the large band. The other bus was the horn section, the background singer, steel, all that. Two of the people on that tested positive. So you're in a bus. So at that point, what they did was, I think we were somewhere in like Colorado or something. They made that bus stay at the hotel for a week, and they even though nobody else was testing positive,
Mm-hmm.
they were in that space. They did, and we continued on, and we did all our shows, but with a small group. And Lyle would talk to the audience and say, "Look, it says large band on the marquee, but here's what happened." But it's
Oh, so the whole, oh, they all stayed back. I see.
Yeah, but only two of the people had tested positive. I
I
think
see.
one of the singers and one of the horn players. And so as soon as everybody was clear, then the bus came out and rejoined wherever we were. Um, but I mean, some bands that are out there are totally paranoid about it, and they're like testing daily. And
Wow.
Lyle said, we're not going to do that out here. We're just, everybody's pretty much smart about how they live and they take care of themselves, and we're watching this stuff. And the thing is, if you start to feel weird, get tested. But so
Mm-hmm.
far, we haven't had any issues since then. And with the audiences, you look out there. Number one, when you're doing an act like Lyle, there's young people in the audience, but the major bulk of the audience is seniors on these shows. Maybe 50, 50, maybe 50 and up.
God, I'm a senior.
Well, and proud of it at this point.
Are
Um,
you guys doing, do you do meet and greets?
yeah, yeah, we didn't do that during COVID, but at this point,
Right.
Lyle does a meet and greet, and now what I do is after every show, I've got my book at the merch table. So when the show ends, I go out to the merch table and sign books and meet people out there.
Fabulous.
So, and I have no issues with, shaking hands and saying hi to people and taking pictures with them and all that. I had COVID for a moment. Actually, Steve Postell and I both got it up in like La Crescenta or wherever with this gig we did up there. We both got it. Unfortunately for Steve, it laid him up.
Hmm.
I had a cough for a day and it was over.
Wow.
So, I'm not at all worried about it. If somebody comes up and they're hacking and stuff, I'll try to keep my distance because it doesn't necessarily have to be COVID. I just don't want
Right.
when you're out there on the road like this, you're in kind of a giant petri dish, so you want to try to avoid, getting any kind of cold or anything like that, especially getting it back to Lyle. Because if we lose him, we lose the show. We can
Right.
kind of get away with losing a certain amount of the band, and the show can still. I mean, he can go out with a guitar and play. So.
So what happens the immediate let's talk about the immediate family you
Yeah.
brought. We talked about Steve for a moment. This is such a I don't want to say a labor of love, an act of love, you guys coming together and doing this. And I am blessed that I got to see a live show. Although the show that I saw, and I love Elliot, I've known Elliot, I met Elliot Easton 40 years ago, love the Cars, but it's still different
Yeah.
than when Wattie's there.
Well, what happened was Waddy's since practically day one, he's been Stevie Nicks' musical director and her right-hand person for everything. So she literally will not go out on the road with
Right.
anybody. And she hit a period where she was working her ass off.
Mhm.
And Waddy, can't see. Now, one of the issues we have with the immediate family is the fact that because we really are relatively unknown. I mean, maybe we're known individually, but the name doesn't mean anything. The guarantees were so low from promoters and stuff that literally every time we do anything, we lose money on it.
Oh,
So so when you're looking at that, and then you've got gigs that are offering you how you pay your bills, it's pretty
right.
easy to see where the choice comes. Now we had commitments to do things, and Waddy was not going to be able to do it because of Stevie's schedule.
Right.
The rest of us were available during that time. So Elliot's an old friend of everybody, and we said, how about if we get this guy and then we can throw Cars tunes into the set and all that.
Which
And
was fabulous.
it
That
was
was
great. It
great.
was really fun, and I've done stuff with Elliot in the past, and it was great to do it. Now that's not the band
Right.
at that point, so it was a little bit of a misnomer. People showing up to see the immediate family,
Hmm.
and it sort of isn't. And we talked about it in the show, and most people, nobody came up and said, "I want my money back. I don't see Waddy here." But it's been difficult because we would love to be doing this, but we just can't afford, traveling. We're not 17 traveling in a van selling CDs out the back, which is exactly what we were doing, though. We're all in a
Right.
Sprinter van hauling our gear, setting up our own gear, have like one crew guy with us. It's, when you're suddenly got guys in their mid late 70s, that's not fun. You're schlepping drums and amps and all that. So we're kind of in a weird point now. We would love to be working, but we need to have financially enough money to be able to put together a proper crew to travel properly and all that. So I'm not sure where it's heading. And we are so proud of the documentary movie that Danny Tedesco did about the.
What an amazing film. I think maybe the best documentary of its type.
We got
Just
100 on Rotten Tomatoes. That's almost unheard of. And
deserved.
yeah, and,
Fantastic.
and like
For Cooch alone smiling, it's, tomatoes out the ass.
yeah. Well, it was great. Like I went over to England uh, to they premiere because for ages I've had people from overseas going, when can we see the movie? And Magnolia finally made a deal with the company for international release. So I went over to London for the release there, and it was great. It was in this really lovely theater, and it was like maybe I don't know 400 people at the screening, and
Hmm.
like Guy Pratt, the bass player from Pink Floyd and stuff, is a dear friend, and he and a bunch of other guys came to the gig and to the thing, and we all did a nice Q&A afterwards. I've done a ton of the Q&As for this movie because Denny Tedesco and I work great as a team together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had a ball with this, and the response is always amazing, and people are just so moved by it. But it just hasn't been able to push it over that next level. And I don't know what the answer is, and I can't devote any time to finding the answer because I'm busy.
Yeah, of course you are.
So we'll see what the future holds. I mean, Russ and I are going to be out with Lyle. There's going to be Stevie Nicks gigs coming up, so Waddy's busy with that. Steve had been doing that Our House tour, kind of the
Right.
David Crosby and all those guys. And Cooch moved back to Rhode Island. Um,
What?
yeah, yeah, he moved back to be near his daughters and stuff. LA
Wow.
was LA was carrying a lot of weight for him.
Yes.
So he needed a change, but he said, "Look, if something comes up, I'm only a plane flight away, so it's not a big deal." But he's
Right.
in a beautiful little town there, and he's got a house overlooking a bay and all this. He's
Hmm.
happy. And when we were back in Rhode Island with Lyle, he came to the gig, and we had dinner together and stuff. So it was great to see him. So the enthusiasm and the energy is still there. It's just the business isn't there.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you just go, this isn't, I don't need another hobby in my life. And this had became kind of a hobby. So we'll see
Hmm.
what the future holds for this. We're certainly not gone, but at this point, something would have to change um, to make it viable. But for me, other than that, like I carry my stuff. It's really been fun just doing other things. It's just coming out now. We did the new Barbra Streisand duets album. I worked on that. Worked on a new Reba McEntire album.
I
Uh,
wanted to ask you about Barbara because I know you're one of the few people that has nothing but nice things to say about Barbara. Does that still hold true?
Absolutely, she's fabulous. And now the thing is, over the years, I mean, I've heard people like just rag, oh, she's a bitch. She's like so hard to work with. The thing I found with her is she's probably one of the most professional people I've ever worked with.
Mm,
She shows up to a session. If somebody's not pulling their weight, she'll call them on it.
hmm.
That's when they go, what a bitch. No, no, if you did your job worked as hard as she works, she would be loving you. I've had
Mm.
the first time I worked with her was playing for a McGovern benefit back in like 1972 at the Forum.
Wow.
And then after that, I played on Evergreen. I played on a bunch of movies. I've done like 3 albums of Butterfly was one of the albums, a whole bunch of stuff. She's been nothing but the consummate professional when she comes in. So
Mm.
when I hear these people ragging about her, or any artist when they rag, when I know those artists and I kind of go, that you obviously weren't pulling your weight. If you come in and you're focused like they are and they're just trying to make the best music they can, do your job and you're fine. But if you're kind of not making it, if you're not cutting it, um, then there's an issue is going to be there. They're paying you, their names on the check, not yours.
Hmm. Reba's got sort of a whole new avenue of celebrity now because she was the voice
Yeah,
judge.
she was on that. And she also found a new guy in her life who she's actually happy with because she
Oh,
had some pretty not shaky relationships in her life. And at this point, Rex is great. I think he was in Yellowstone. He's an actor, big,
I
and it was
love Yellowstone.
yeah, yeah, it was great. But he's really a sweetheart of a guy, and he's like this muso freak. Like when we went down to Nashville, Russ and I went down, he was like all he could do was corner us constantly and want to pick our brains about what we've done and stuff. And Reba, I mean, I've done so many records with Reba over the years, and it's been fun to watch, from her TV shows and all these different things that she's done. She's
I saw her on Broadway in Annie
oh,
Get Your
great,
Gun. Yeah.
great, great.
Hmm.
She's just one of those people that it's kind of like what you see is what you get.
Mm.
The most perfect example of that still is Dolly, is, what you see is what you get. She's probably the most honest, real person I've ever known in my life.
How lovely.
She's she is astounding. Um, and we've done a lot of stuff over the years together. And I always tell people, like, no, no, there's when you see her being self-deprecating and goofy and so that's exactly who she is. I mean, it breaks my heart that her husband Carl passed away.
Mm.
this past year because they had been married like, I don't know, going on 60 years or something like that. They were an amazing couple. I think he was an asphalt paver. I remember he sounded like he made Jim Neighbors sound like Laurence Olivier. It's like, I so do you love country music? And he goes, nah, I like Zeppelin and Cream and all that stuff. They're
You
a
know, speaking of which, Lee, how do you and Maureen keep this? How long have you guys been married? Long time.
50,
Oh my God.
54 years now, I think. So,
That is absolutely insane.
well, I've been home for 12 of them.
So is that the secret to success?
Well, to a certain extent, there's probably is a bit of truth with that.
Mm.
It's like I don't know if either of us could stand if we were in each other's, face all the time. But but the thing that's, I mean, I was with Maureen before I met James Taylor. So that's
Wow.
how far back we go. And so she's been around this whole business. She's known everybody and stuff. And she really, the only thing about music for her, she likes music, but doesn't play. She doesn't sing or do any of that. She just enjoys it. I mean, a lot of times we would go to a show together and she would go, shut the fuck up. Because I'd be sitting here talking about the mix and the reading and cues, and she's just enjoying herself. So she just goes, it's like going to Disneyland and she's trying to enjoy the haunted mansion, and I'm explaining how all the rides work. And she goes, shut up, Mr. Anal Retentive. So
Well, Lee, I am so happy that I got to spend this time with you. I just adore you, and I know you're going to be out on the road for a lot, but maybe we'll come see you somewhere.
I would love it. It would be great. It's always great to see you at the shows. And I'll be with Postel tomorrow.
Where?
Um,
Where?
we're doing a thing for David Helfand tomorrow
Where?
at the Skirball Center.
Oh,
It's
that's like a private gig,
it's
it
a
sounds
private.
like.
It's like
Mm.
something like a lawyer thing that Helfand
Oh,
is involved with. So it's like their big annual award dinner and stuff. We did it last year, so he asked Steve to put a band together for that. So we're doing that tomorrow. And then the rest of the time, I'm just focused on getting the house in order before I hit the road at the end of the.
are you still doing the heavy lifting and everything outside? And
Oh yeah, it never stops. It never stops. Uh, the yard is relentless. And I always tell people, like, guys, are you still doing that? I go, my yard is my Prozac. I mean, really, it really is therapy for me to get out and get dirty, climb around and be planting and trimming and doing heavy grunt work. And
So when you're out on the road, what takes the place of that?
nothing, I lose my mind. No,
Do you have things you do when you're out on the road?
no, it's really hard. Our schedule with Lyall is really hard.
Mm.
Number one, especially on the summer tour with the 15-piece band, a day off is a budget buster.
Mm.
When there isn't money coming in and you're putting 15 people up in hotels. We,
Right,
our schedule normally is like we'll go to sound check at like we'll leave a hotel at 3 o'clock, check out at 3 o'clock, go to sound check from like 4 to 5:30, have dinner after that. That's usually when I go doing my walkthroughs of the venues for my YouTube channel. Then we'll play the show. We'll start at like 8 o'clock, finish around 11. The bus drivers are on schedule, so we'll get on the bus at midnight and we'll drive to the next city. And sometimes we get in at 4, sometimes we get in at 9, just depending on distance. Check
right,
check into a hotel, sleep a couple hours if you can, or do whatever you're going to do. Check out again, go, or you repeat this. And sometimes we've done 10,
wow,
10, 15 cities in a row before we have a day off.
wow.
And it's a hard tour, but it's the only way something like this makes sense. And I give Lyle all the credit in the world. There's very few artists that would take 15 musicians on the road with them.
Yeah.
Maybe Harry Connick or Michael Bublé or one.
Hmm.
Generally, a lot of those I think are local orchestras that
Hmm.
they'll pick up. They'll have their core rhythm section, but we are really plowing all the time
And
out.
how are you spending your time on the bus? Do you binge watch shows? Do you listen to music? What are you doing?
One of the best things that ever happened was when they were able to put internet on the bus. So I just climb in my bunk and I watch Netflix. I watch.
Uh-huh.
I mean, sometimes depending, because a lot of the
We have
drive.
a good one. We just watched a new one. Excellent. Uh, District Q. Is it called District? I think
Hmm,
it's called District. Oh, it's really good. Did you watch Slow Horses
I haven't
with
seen that.
Gary Oldman?
I'll
Oh,
have to check that
okay.
out.
Two shows that are
Okay, I'll
excellent.
definitely check that because I mean, I would sit there and watch like watch Bosch,
I
and
did that too. And oh, there's a new one we're watching now today. It just came out, The Survivors, it's called.
hmm,
Also on Netflix. Another good one. It's
okay,
from Australia or something.
okay, yeah, because I sit there and I just scroll through. I mean, sometimes we'll hit, Bermuda Triangle areas where there's like no reception. So then you're kind of just stuck at that point. But if we're driving during the day, sometimes it's really nice just to sit and look out the window. But a lot of our
Mm.
driving is overnight, so you have no idea what it is. And but I'm really, I don't sleep. So like I'm up all night on the thing, or I'll go up and sit with the driver and then we'll hit truck stops and just
I
go.
remember I would be on Facebook at 2 and 3 in the morning, and you'd be right there with me. And then we're both back on at 7 or 8 a.m.
Yeah, I mean it's a sickness, but it's a sickness that I can live with. So,
Well, it hasn't done you any harm that
well, I'm
I can
19
tell.
years old and look at me. I mean, it's actually taken its toll.
Oh my goodness, Lee, thank you so much. I adore you, and I look forward to seeing you in the real world again soon, I hope.
Absolutely, Vicky. You are one of my favorite people in the world. And
Likewise.
anytime you want to do this, I'm here for you.
I love you. Take care. Send my love to Maureen.
Will do. Give Snuffy
Bye
my
bye.